Most of the time, Sam Selvon's London is a lonely place that is, quote, divided up in little worlds, and you stay in the world you belong to, and you don't know anything about what's happening in the other ones, except what you read in the papers. These worlds are divided on socioeconomic and racial lines, and the different groups rarely interact. Selvon's descriptions of Hyde Park in the summer, however, show a stark contrast to the rest of the book. Me and Jude got off the train at Hyde Park Corner, at the southeastern corner of the park, which is one of the most used roundabouts in London, and walked around the green space at the center of the roundabout. From here we walked to the Serpentine and north through the park to the Marble Arch, getting back on the train there. The park was very busy when we visited, and there was some kind of music festival going on. During the summer, the fog, while still remaining, quote, in the distance, relents. Moses describes, quote, the blazing summer under the trees, in the park, on the grass, with the daffodils and tulips in full bloom and a sky of blue. Oh, it does really be beautiful then. Hyde Park during the summer becomes the only place in the book where the little world Selvon describes can coexist, as is shown by Moses and his friends' encounters with wealthy white women. He describes the park as an incredibly diverse place with all kinds of people interacting. This experience is still true today. Hyde Park on a weekend is representative of a broad, diverse London. There is a beautiful Serpentine that stretches through most of the central area, many fountains and statues, as well as lush trees and grass. Overall, the park feels like an oasis within the city. In the novel, Selvon mentions both Hyde Park Corner with its Wellington Arch and the Marble Arch directly across the park at the other entrance as major landmarks, places that Moses often hangs out at, waiting on the bench to pick up women. These arches were originally intended to be driven through an approach to Buckingham Palace from the north, to emphasize the grandeur of the city as one first entered. Today they are still impressive, although the Marble Arch was being cleaned, so we did not get a good look at it. The northern orientation of the arches means they would not be accessed by Moses or any other formerly colonized immigrant, but rather by the white visitors that Moses encounters in the park, who believe that, quote, the streets of London were paved with gold. At the same time that the arches provide an entrance to an idealized London, they also provide an entrance to the park, itself an idealized version of London. Moses describes the encounters in the park in a fantastical way and emphasizes that, quote, the things that does happen in this London, people won't believe when you tell them. The park offers escape from the boxed-in lives of the characters, but is not fully tangible. The wealthy white women only see the immigrants as a stereotype and vice versa. Perhaps in contrast, the park today is no longer quite the spectacle that it once was. While still beautiful, the city of London is now a much more livable place. The park feels less like an outlier and more like a representation.
On our way home, we stopped at Waterloo Station, which is where Moses meets Oliver at the beginning of the book, and is also where Moses himself arrived in London before the events of the story. We had only ever seen the underground level of the station, so we weren't too impressed initially just because it's not that much different from other tube stations in London. However, once we got above ground to the main room, it was just incredible. The space goes on and on in both directions. There are apparently 24 platforms here, so you just see trains coming in at all times. People are all over the place. It's really packed and loud, and high ceilings. The place echoes. There's a grand clock in the center. It feels like a very majestic entrance into London. And on your way out of the station, you pass under the Victory Arch, which is this really grand stone exit with Britannia on top, depicted with the Torch of Liberty, which is apparently what it was called. And it was apparently in the station at the time that Lonely Londoners takes place. So you have to think that this archway must have been a very significant symbol of promise and potential in London. You're exiting this very intense, large station, and you walk out through this grand archway that is supposed to represent liberty. And you see the city of London out in front of you, and there had to be 4 immigrants like Moses and Oliver, a feeling of uncertainty and excitement. where this big city could have so much to offer you, and it's the promise of a new life, for better or for worse. Though Selvin writes about this space in a generally positive manner, he describes the station to have a soft feeling. He writes that it was here that Moses did land when he came to London, and you have no doubt that when the time come, if it ever come, it would be here that he would say goodbye to the big city. He describes the space as a place where you see people crying goodbye and kissing welcome. And he also writes about these immigrants that they can't get away from the habit of going to Waterloo whenever a boat train coming in with passengers from the West Indies. They like to see the familiar faces. They like to watch their countrymen coming off the train. Though the space is so large and overwhelming, the promise and the inspiring nature of the place seems to be what really sticks with Moses. Though he seems to have grown cynical of the city, he still recognizes Waterloo Station as a significant space in his own story and the story of others like him. It is almost comforting for him and for others to see more immigrants coming into the space, because it's an indication that they are not alone in their unique experience in London, that other people are going through the same thing that they are going through. And also, as the first and last place in London that these immigrants probably see, it carries significance as a symbol of change in life. The station is an epic first impression of London and its scale, and it is also where these people will say goodbye to London before they head off to their next destination in life. Though the station did experience some renovations in the late 1800s and early 1900s, the station is not too different now than it was at the time that the novel takes place, which I think is good because the massive scale that I experienced in the station and the intimidating nature of the space as well was experienced by the real-life immigrants of the time as well as the characters in the novel. In recent years, there has been a Windrush monument added to the station. We did not manage to see this monument, but it's very fitting that it was put in Waterloo Station, as it emphasizes this location's significance in this time of mass immigration to London. To this day, though still intimidating, the station remains a very exciting and impressive welcoming space to the city of London.